Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday, January 12th, virtual policy committee meeting for the Round Township School District. I'd like to start this meeting by welcoming everybody who is here, our solicitor, Mr. Diazio, and Mr. Regal, Mrs. Waldman, Mr. Batchelor, and our committee members and student representative. Our teacher representative is unable to make it today. And I'd like to turn the meeting over at this point to Mr. Regal for administrative remarks.
Sure, thank you, Amy. And I want to first and foremost wish everyone a happy new year. It's our first meeting of the year, so I hope everyone had a good break. And thank you again for all your work on policy committee. Tonight we do have a few policies up for a second read as well as some first reads. Policy 348, currently listed as unlawful harassment. There's a recommended policy title change to just be harassment, is up for a second read. And as a reminder, policies 448 and 548 are up for second read repeals, as they previously covered different employee groups. And that'll be captured in policy 348 now. And as we move forward in a new category 300. With us tonight, we have Tracy Waldman. She's special counsel for Radnor, and she has assisted with the policy that's up for a first read, 113, special education, and the subsequent ARs, which include positive behavior support, child find, special ed evaluations, and IEEs, and also section 504. So if there's any questions from the committee when we get there, she can certainly provide some input. And then the last one, due to the formatting changes, which we'll go over when we get there, to policy 113, there is a policy 113.2 up for repeal. All right. Thanks, Amy.
Excellent. Thanks, George. That takes us to public comment. Do we have any public comment for this evening?
There is no public comment for this evening.
Okay, then we'll move into the next item, which is approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes up for approval. There was an editorial change to the October 13th, 2020 Policy Committee meeting minutes that have been revised. Is everybody on the committee good with board members? Are you good with those minutes at this point? Okay, great. And we also have last month's committee meeting minutes to approve. Everybody on the board members, fellow board members, you're good with those? Okay, terrific. So that then brings us into the meat of the agenda, starting with agenda item 4.1, policy 348, unlawful harassment, a second reading. Mr. Regal, Mr. Diazio, anybody have anything to say before we see if there's any feedback from the board on that?
Nothing new to add since last month. Ed, I don't know if you have anything, but
no.
Just the title change, like I said, will be harassment as we move it forward for a second read.
So does anybody have any questions or comments or before we look to move this to the full board at the end of the month for its second reading and adoption? I see head shaking. Okay, well, we will then officially say that this is ready to be seen by the full board at the end of the month for its second reading and adoption. On to agenda item 4.2, which includes two second readings of repeals, 448 and 548, unlawful harassment. I assume there are no further comments from Mr. Regal or Mr. Diazio. Committee members, do you have any comments? Are you ready to move this forward to the full board at the end of the month for a second reading and repeal? Head nod, yes, we're good? Okay. Terrific. So officially, that's moving forward to the end of January. And now we will turn to a new item on our agenda, which is policy 113, as Mr. Regal said earlier, the special education policy. Mr. Regal?
Yep, so I'll start and then Ed will probably jump in, and Tracy, if you'd like. I want to go over just quickly the special ed policy 113. As I said, there's a policy up for repeal, but the formatting is what looks most different in this policy from what it currently is written to look like, and mainly because of the ARs. So in working with Ed and Tracy and looking at the special ed policy, as we move forward, this policy forward, and of course we can answer questions. The ARs are really what's driving the categories that were previously listed elsewhere. So the policy is really special ed law, federal law, IDEA, and then of course we followed chapter 14 in Pennsylvania, and that's captured in the policy. And then the ARs, which are positive behavior support, which would be 113.1, child find, which would be 113.2, Special education evaluation and independent evaluations would be 113.3, and then AR 113.4 is section 504. So we can take questions, as needed. And Ed, if you want to add anything now, but the formatting, like I said, may look a little different than other policies and previously how it was written. So I want to make sure I explain that.
Okay, great. Thank you. If Mrs. Waldman and Mr. Diazio, you don't have anything extra to add at this point, I'd like to see if anybody on the committee has any questions about policy 113. Jeff.
I just would appreciate, this is my first time looking at, learning about this policy and a little bit beforehand, just the impetus for the timing. And I know in reading the, in preparation, it looks like this is something that is done cyclically or at the appropriate times, but just a little context would be appreciated.
Yeah, Ed, do you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, I could take that. So the special education policies were actually identified probably about a year ago as ones that we could take a look at in anticipation of the district being in cyclical monitoring this year. So every couple of years, the Department of Education will come in and we'll do routine review of the special education program and the things that are being done. We had originally planned to get these done previously, but there were so many other priorities that came up, and we're just getting to it now. This is the year that the district is in cyclical monitoring. The good thing is when the folks that do those reviews come in, they're looking for certain things. And so what they do in one school district and what they recommend in one school district is the same as what they're going to recommend in all of the districts that they go into. So in looking at some of the PSBA, the School Board Association guidance, they issued recently some recommendations to make sure you incorporate it into your policies to address things that they know that in the most recent round of cyclical monitoring, the auditors have been looking for. So it was a policy that, again, we had started to look at about a year ago. We wanted to do it in connection with this cyclical review process. And then most recently, PSBA came out with some recommendations that they encourage school districts to put into their policies in anticipation of comments from the auditors. So it was all of those things that kind of came together that triggered this review.
That excellent. That helpful, Jeff, for you? Okay.
Baseline.
Okay. Any other questions about 113 from anybody?
I do have one quick question. So, Ed, is there, this is all just very formulaic. It's very much prescribed by federal law, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's very much prescribed by the law, and some of the language, when you say formulaic, you may also be in part referring to some of the quote boilerplate that we're used to seeing from PSBA, and that's true. And for these policies, their real intention. I mean, special ed is a huge wing of your operation. You could never put everything about special ed into a couple policies, but there are certain things that, again, auditors are looking for in policies, certain statements that are important to be included, and that's where these policies come into play. They're really designed to meet our minimum compliance requirements. And so the PSBA language is good language because we know that it meets with the approval of those doing the monitoring.
I think I more meant to say there's not a whole lot of leeway in what we can and can't do or provide. We have to provide certain things, and there's not a whole lot of leeway one way or the other.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yep.
All right. No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, then. I would say this policy looks like it's ready to be moved to the full board business meeting at the end of the month for a first reading. And that takes us to the final item on our agenda, which is 4.4, and it's a repeal of one of the special ed policies we had. Do you, Ed or George, do you want to speak to why it's being repealed really quickly?
Yes, it's being repealed because one of the new ARs captures that material. So the positive behavior support is captured under that AR instead of the policy.
Okay. Great. So anybody have any concerns about the repeal? Nope. Okay.
I just,
So, oh,
Amy, Chairwoman, may I
Yep.
ask just a quick question? Maybe I should have asked it last time, but we're rolling along. Anything Ed or George I know it's probably because I'm just looking for where it was changed from, the language was changed. I don't need every single detail, but if there's some top line narrative about what has been updated in the policy since being proposed versus where it existed, is there anything sort of top line that sort of encapsulates what modification we made, or was it strictly very legal and
Let me,
not-
I could take a
Okay.
look. The 504
Mhm.
document, that is a new,
Okay,
that's new. There wasn't really anything about 504 previously.
okay,
If you look in the document on positive behavior support, some of the most recent changes, and I actually meant to, you'll probably see that there's some information that's highlighted in green. We'll take those highlights away, but those were some of the more recent changes that were made to this document based on PSBA's recommendations. There's been more of a push around behavior to emphasize more positive reinforcement as opposed to negative, looking at behavior from a negative lens, and to use behavior to support students to try to use positive techniques to influence behavior. Not too much changed on the child find front. The district's obligations regarding child find have not been changed all that much. And regarding the evaluations, I would consider the tweaks in that realm pretty legal and technical. Nothing big picture there.
good
thank you.
question, Jeff. Does that help?
It does. It's I read, but it's sometimes, it's great about the different lines, but there's a lot of meat here. So
Yep.
it helps to get a little tips and look here. So thank you.
Yep,
Okay.
no problem.
Jeff, not to interject, sorry, Ms. But Amy, that was kind of the reason I asked about how much this is prescribed by law, because there is an awful lot here, and it might lead us to all feel like, well, we should, is there something we're supposed to be reviewing and giving input here? And not to say we can't have questions, but at the end of the day, these are some of our policies that are the most dictated by not only state law, but federal law. So that's kind of why I was asking that question before, because there's so much here.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, there's really very little that we could change.
No,
Is
it's
that-
very helpful and instructive for those of us who don't have as much of experience in this space. So good.
Yeah. Good, thoughtful questions. Thank you, everybody, and very helpful answers. So thank you, administrator, solicitor, for that. All right, well then that will move forward for first read as well at the end of the month. And that takes us to item number 5, which is new business. Does anybody have any new business when it comes to policy? No? Okay. Make something up. We've only been at this for 15 minutes.
I will say, just to kind of preview some things for the committee. I know the last couple months with special ed this month and some of the Title IX policies that we've been talking about for the last couple of months, so much of what we've been looking at has just been legal requirements and updating policies to come into compliance with the law. And there hasn't been a whole lot of policy decision making that has been done, because again, the things that we're looking at, to Susan's point, they've kind of been dictated to us. In talking with George, we're hoping that in the coming months, we're going to be looking at some topics where the board will have more leeway to weigh in and to actually develop policy and make decisions and talk about subjects where you do have much more discretion. So those things will be coming in future months. So stay tuned. It'll get a little bit more exciting as the months go on.
And we do continue to give prizes for short meetings
Right.
and boards. And for the start of a new year, policy committee, all of you've got the belt for brevity and having the quickest meeting, which is something that is that doesn't happen often. So let's enjoy it.
I'm not sure what to do with myself.
I credit Ms. Duffy as vice
Yeah.
president.
Ms.
Vice
Duffy,
chair.
you're-
She's just
Stop
made it that
talking.
much more efficient.
What's the prize?
Thank you, Miss Duffy.
Oh, it's a surprise. Don't worry. There are gold stars and pats on the backs.
Surprise and prize. Sounds like it could be a dangerous combination. All right. So with that, we'll see if there's any other public comment because that's the last item on the agenda.
There is no public comment.
Okay, no suspense around that. All right, then. I'm going to bid you all farewell. I hope that you have a very nice rest of the evening for those of you whom I won't see. And for those of you who I will see, enjoy your dinner, and we'll be back at this in a few moments.
Night,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.